Fucking horrible. This camera is alright. I'm using this setup. I know this setup. I called him yesterday. Shit. Shit change, bro. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know what the audio's coming from. Hold on. Oh, I know. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. That was exactly what I'm trying to figure out. So everything's off, down. Um, I don't know what the freaking problem is with this, man. This is insane. Mic check 1 2 1 2. So I'm getting them. So I'm getting this is the mic right here. Polling location, they ran out of actual ballot cards. There was some people just did not get the opportunity to vote, were sent home early. If you were in line, like I said, a lot of people were supposed to able to stay there and vote regardless of what time it was. And so all these things essentially were barriers to us getting our vote out here in Georgia. And so kind of set that video to really preface what our problems are with registry signs voting and surround voters tactics and strategies that knock people out of the voting system or render people and so, we're back from our commercials. We have a community department that I also want to take a moment to introduce. The Green Light Fund has several locations across the country, but there are organizations that moved here in Georgia just about last year, and they were seeking to bring very innovative nonprofit models to a state or to an area that needed. They would do research in other states and figure out what was working and what wasn't, and then they would identify a bigger or stronger team in locations where that resource wasn't present, and they would invest in bringing to that place. And so she has a question for you guys, a community question, but I also just want to introduce her work and but first we have a video of my clients. Recent work here. Ready? Yeah. We're just going to be doing the video. Bring light funds down wild.
You say Green Light Fund video?
Stand up online to validate their voter ID, and then they have to join the second line to wait to actually cast their ballots.
We are an before the vote. We have a statewide election protection application. We're also getting a phone call.
I don't think. Yeah. This is and she's ready to chew in whatever.
Build up what is in some ways a future.
Yeah.
Sylvia, let's keep going. Is it this one? Yeah. Yeah.
So we found where it's at.
The great light bulb is one of those things that starts to build up what is in some ways an answer for so many other challenges.
Slow down.
To say, how do I read? That's why I'm proud of this. It was to be
We are so excited to be here making this exciting announcement for Kansas City.
That's what we do. Creativity. Just things are all design.
starts to build up what is in some ways an answer for so many of the challenges we have in Kansas City.
Fun
And then the mentor opportunity. And really open the young people in Kansas City around our neighborhood. That's why I'm proud and pleased to be here today to announce a $1.7 million grant to bring the becoming a man and working on womanhood enablers to Kansas City. And that will start right here at the Independence Division.
We are so excited to be here making this an exciting announcement for Kansas City. Green Light is new to Kansas City. We are a nonprofit grant maker, but that's not
Get some shots.
second ongoing
Understanding we might not be able to bring them all for including us and having the opportunity to have us with folks who I believe that this program may provide the necessary wraparound structures to be able to help do the challenge, but at the end of the day, also with this investment,
I don't even need it. So I'm gonna just run it off the wire shot. It's a great project, program too.
But nevertheless, what we see right now is an opportunity for us to get good news, good stories for our young people, good trends. I know there are people that walk up to me every day and they say, what are you doing about the crowd? What are you doing about this or that in our neighborhood? Well, here's the answer. And here's the type of program that does it. Starting at Rusty High, Smithdale, expanding throughout our community, expanding throughout our region. We will make a significant difference. And I'm so proud to work with you.
Yeah, we want to kind of move forward in our program because we've been, I appreciate it. We're going to move forward our program. What I really want to do as well is get you the most important information. Right now, this is a special election, right? And I want you also to have time like this. We don't only have the 2020 presidential election in front of us, but we had local elections in front of us since the beginning. So there's been some runoffs and special elections as well. Right now is the year of the census. The results of the census can affect our lives and our community. The amount of money and support that we receive here at the local level or the number. And the deadline for the census is a little bit closer than the deadline for voter registration. Neither one is without the other, but September the 30th is the deadline for the census. In a moment, I'm going to display a QR code by our partners in the Georgia project to allow you to actually log into, I'm sorry, not log into, but be able to actually fill out the system. It takes about 10 minutes. We want you guys to be able to scan it and fill it out if you have it. But we also want to figure out, as far as, okay, this isn't the census question, this is a community question, but we're moving a little ahead in our program. So we'll let that stay up there, but we're going to switch to the census. QR ones, I see has it. With the census in front of us and then elections right after that, what kind of situations or what kind of solutions can you find by leaving the census down on track? I'm not sure if our audience really understands when I say if you miss it, that it could affect our community. Any one of our panelists wants to point to your point what the census may or may not be able to do for it.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Really briefly, because I've had this conversation several times recently, the census is essentially the ways and means to governments counting their populations, right? And they need to understand who's in their community, how many people are in their community, and then be able to better plan for how they allocate resources within different areas. Of course, we know local governments receive a large number of funding from the federal government. Right, and so a lot of the census data itself is used to advocate for specific needs, values, certain dollar amounts, resources for communities to be able to better understand and plan for the needs of that community. So in the event where those resources are not, or people are not counted, those things are essentially, there's a dollar figure associated with that each individual person within the community, that if they are not counted, then they are foregoing that level of resource for a community. So we talk about things like hospitals, adequate planning for our educational services, all of those different pieces that go along with community building and planning without having our census completed and being able to adequately count who's there, then we're giving money on the table.
Great. I don't want to skip over introduction time, so if I still want to ask you to answer a question, I want you to also take a moment to introduce yourself. Let know that you were doing something.
Yeah, sorry about that. My name is Sterling Johnson. I'm the portfolio manager for the Just Opportunity portfolio with partnership with Southern Equity. PSC is a racial justice organization. We can talk more about that in more detail. But Just Opportunity focus specifically on economic inclusion and how do we promote economic opportunity for people and business owners, and specifically Black and Brown communities across the American South.
So the census, the deadline is September the 30th. We're able to display the link for everyone. We're going to definitely get you guys that link before the end of the show once you all get able to scan and make sure that you fill out the census. I want to go back to the first QR code that we had up, or at least I can repeat any question. We were unable to bring in Jolie Cooper, the CEO of Green Light Fund. You were able to maybe see some of the work that they've done in Kansas, but however, Ms. Jolie has sponsored a question for is one that may be solved by actually going and filling out the census for voting. She asks a question, she poses the question, what are the two to three most urgent issues facing our under-resourced community? And so I've designed another QR code for you guys in the community to answer this with us. You can take a picture of it, you can answer it when you get home. But as well, right around that question about the census and how it affects our lower, our lower level of community, providing funds and support for us. What are the two most pressing issues, in your opinion, in each of your opinions, two or three that are facing under-resourced communities? So when people do miss out on the census or these funds or the care that they get into these communities, what are two of the most urgent issues that they face in the absence of support? You can take a second to introduce yourself, just make sure the mic is on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Fan. My name is one of those
honor to be in the space with everyone that's coming from everywhere. I think two urgent facing under-resourced things in communities for me. I work at a national level too, so I've been able to travel into a lot of the communities. 20 different communities, just helping them focus on increasing opportunity, increasing poverty. And I think for me in my city, particularly the way it would be education and health, I think they're essential things that always get overlooked. It's something that really is a part of our lives on a daily basis of earth. It's important that we invest in health. I know a lot of hospitals and clinics is not providing quality health care for young people and just their families. In addition to just education, it's just not high quality. So there's issues of equity that exist within both education and health. And I think if we don't put those things as priorities for community and always treat them as priorities, then we're not going to have health communities that thrive. It's important that young people know how to navigate to become successful in whatever it is that they're trying to do. Whether we're a business or they want to we're teaching people about their options, educating people about what their systems are. How change makes sure that on the ground. You know, when it starts from politicking and taking to make sure voting and move and towards elected officials. I think it's a huge cycle of just education. We don't get it wrong, it's just our duty to make sure that and just help. Not just an institution to provide health care, but about mental health and just how as the poor communities, under-resourced communities, kind of help these things. It's just not really possible. You're really like struggling and figuring. So I think that's just like a really important thing to really take into education and health. Because like I said, structurally, you're going to live a long life. You're going to always want to learn about new things. And we need to learn new things so we can learn how to update ourselves and update the communities that we live in.
Right. Appreciate that call.
I agree with everything she said. My two most pressing issues would probably be first the racial wealth gap, and second the cycle of poverty that is born out of the disinvestment the divestment of Black and brown communities. And it's not something that's new per se, but I think the urgency comes from the way in which we're seeing the racial wealth gap being exacerbated, right? Even in the face of all the advancement of Black and brown people across America, with all of our striving towards higher education, with all of our businesses, we've got multi-millionaires all over the place in the Black community, and the collective buying power and purchasing power that we tout within the Black community. And despite all of these things, that the actual wealth gap is widening, right? That we're seeing our Black and brown communities be left behind completely by legacy wealth. And now we look at the COVID issue, we're seeing one of the largest transfers of wealth in history. And so we're seeing, small businesses, Black businesses are at very high risk right now. We're seeing a lot of, the transition that's really happening between that foregoing of revenue and income by really being taken over by our larger conglomerates, a lot of white-owned businesses as well. So when we talk about kind of this overall structure, we're looking at both the individual, what we see on at least in the state of Georgia, the city of Atlanta. Of course, we've got huge issues with economic disparities and income, right, between Black and brown communities, of course, and then of course we look also at economic mobility, right, within Black communities, where someone born into the lower quartiles of poverty only has about a 4% chance of making it among the tier of upper income earners. And so when we look at these issues as a whole, then we start to extrapolate them across the community, then we start looking at this bigger issue about the cycle of disinvestment and disenfranchisement that is born out of poverty, right? That in Atlanta specifically, we've heard a lot about the Atlanta way over time. And the Atlanta way itself is really the convergence of private capital and public interest. And as we see even at the national level, we've got private interests having influence on our political structures, then we're really looking at ways in which the community and the people's voice is getting lost in economic development and economic growth. Right? That there are all types of agendas that creep into our political system at that point that eliminate or influence the way in which people are then able and allowed to participate in our local economies. And we look at all of those things, to Kim's point, that deal with our services, our tax base, it deals with our school and our quality of education, it deals with our hospitals, right? And all these things go hand in hand. And so when we don't address the racial wealth gap, then we're concentrating poverty in greater capacities within Black and brown communities, which is going to have an impact in some of these other areas as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Like the wealth gap, and a lot of my friends and family Atlanta is very attractive to different places. Georgia is a very attractive place. People envision it to be, joking Wakanda or a Black Mecca, and they're thinking about underground links. They're thinking about East Lake. They're thinking about 25, which in other cities could be compared to, in LA, would be Hollywood's downtown Hollywood, right? If we were in New York, it would be Times Square, where most of the events are going to see. What you're seeing, what you believe is a Black Mecca, is actually Black disparity. And so, when we talk about the gap of disparity here, it's because of wealth. People that grew here have less opportunity to thrive, right? And it's not that in that form of, reaching back and getting help or support from our legacy or our family or support. A lot of these people gain their education here, they come here, go to our college, and they go over here. They want us to think we're going to grab up all our opportunities within the land, right? Can't do this, right? We don't, we're not able to get our home, we leave our family behind. So you bring up some really good points. I want Leah to take a moment to introduce yourself and like that. So you guys take us a bit of share with us too. What is the most beneficial of
Of course. Hi everyone, I'm Ian Chantal, also known as the Fifth Creative.
I live over Dixie Hills too.
Right. So that's Bankhead. You guys know that's like a community within Bankhead, and which has been vastly affected by gentrification. Bankhead has been a historically black community, and when you're riding down, one day and you see people who don't look like you running on Bankhead, it's questionable. And Mayor Bonham, she's my soror. I love her efforts and whatnot, and her intentions for what she's doing for Atlanta to make better the roads and whatnot. And people gravitate towards that, but the people who are in these communities, Bankhead, Dixie Hills, and whatnot, they don't really understand the repercussions of what this better means for their community. Yeah, we might get better sidewalks and roads and whatnot, but taxes are going to increase on the property. A lot of times these people are being displaced. And a lot of times, even when it comes down when you ride through these edges, communicate with these communities, you're wondering, why does it look like this? Why I hear a lot of times it's very annoying to me, black people don't know how to take care of what they have. And a lot of times it comes from the resources. If people can barely keep a roof over their head, how do you expect them to care for their lawn or ABC and D? They have better pressing things from their perspective. So education being number one, and again, like you said, health, that typically follows, and that's just a huge issue in the minority community, especially here in Atlanta.
Mental health, mental health, like wording as well is so important. I think that I work with Jim, I work with Sterling. I've just started working with him, but I work accent language in Jim's work. Accent language is one of the most important things. It helps us ask different questions. So we talk about mental health. I also want to mention mental wellness, which may bring about a different feeling, right? So definitely those things are respected. The black community, they're not always accessible in lower income communities. We started our conversation on a little inverse. We popped up with the census, and then we had this conversation, but it's all about widening the conversation about voting. I think that young people, we associate voting as presidential, right? And something that high up, we never felt like we had control. And so even our parents didn't have been understanding of it, and so therefore we're left with less understanding. But I want voting to be tied to something that we're using in a timely manner, right? And so we're really having this conversation about community investment in development and really supporting our peers and connecting us with resources. So I want to highlight this book here. So I also want to kind of come up on the screen for us before I come to the next piece. But it's the recommendations for increasing opportunity and decreasing poverty. Essentially, these are recommendations or policies or notes or best practices written out by a number of adults from across the country. We are honored to have Kimberly. She's so humble, but we're honored to have Kimberly. She's one of the founding members of the Council of Universities, and she also her work has sparked off and inspired my work. So Kim, I want you to get the book up here though. But as the book comes up, she also brought me the shirt too. I told him I want to spark. But Opportunity Youth United is a coalition. I'm gonna let Kim kind of give you the spiel about what Opportunity Youth United is, but it's a coalition. A coalition is a collection of like-minded organizations that all band together to resolve issues.
Thank you, Roosevelt. Brief intro into the recommendation. There is PDF versions, y'all, but I know some of us have hard copies in here. And just some context to this book right here. Like Roosevelt shared, I wasn't with the original folks that got to write a lot of these policy recommendations, but there's a group called the National Council of Young Leaders. And these young leaders are sponsored by different organizations to basically convene together, coming from all different backgrounds. You have tribal communities represented, you have white, being represented right here in this group called the National Council of Leaders. Basically, this booklet is their policy recommendations. It kept it real general. So if you tap in, you see there's like 6 policy recommendations. There's some talk about broader systems change, but essentially, I think what's really important is that we understand that young people can't get together to basically, and not only did they come together, but they believed in these recommendations enough to take these in front of different individuals, powerful people who actually have decision-making power in our communities. We're talking about taking these recommendations to the White House. We're shoving them down a lot of different people's throats, just to help them understand that young people do come together. And not only do young people come together, but the movement actually has intentionality of bringing adult allies in this space as well. And the importance of it is that we advocate together, that we come up with solutions that we're able to bring to the table. We don't just have people talking about us, talking about what they're going to do for us, but actually young people taking the charge and saying, this is what we need from you all. We need increasing programs that actually work in our communities. We need people to access mentorships. We know how important it is when you have a caring adult or individual in your life that's willing to help you that's willing to join your journey. You actually make successes in your journey towards whatever goals or dreams you're trying to achieve. Like I shared with you all, there's about 6 policy recommendations, and we do have a call for broader systems change. We do tap into the conversations about police brutality, about community economics, about being wellness. What does wellness mean? Being a young person has been disconnected. So opportunity youth is basically a term where we are trying to look at young people as assets, right? You can probably hear a lot of people talking about disconnected, disengaged, opportunity terms that change here. Young people aren't disconnected because just by they're disconnected because there are systems in place that create barriers for young people to actually be successful. If you know that communities have been disenfranchised or there is disinvestment in community, you can't expect young people to thrive through these types of situations when you have this is so much chaos that happens on the day-to-day ground, whether you're coming from a privileged community or you're coming from an under-resourced community. I think there's a lot of different realities people are facing. It's making it hard for young people to actually be successful in education, be successful and actually be connected to opportunities and help sustain themselves. It's not just about getting a job, but it's about getting a job where you can actually take care of yourself, where you're not struggling on your job, where you're not trying to find another job that's taking you away from, that's taking time away from you to actually grow yourself. People need, times where you may be working and actually time when you have a break, you're able to enjoy family time, personal time, and things like that. But essentially, tap into these recommendations. And what I would call to action for everyone here that gets to hear me is come up with your own recommendations for your community. And it might not be for the entire city. It might could be just for your zip code. It might could be recommendations for the communities that you identify with. But just have that belief that you could come together and develop your solutions, and then there are people out here that want to connect and implement those solutions. So, yeah, check us out.
I'm not sure if everyone got one. Everyone is in your hands. They got an example of what other young people around the country are asking for what we're ready to do. As she stated, it's a compilation. It's a group effort. And I think that is a foundation for a lot of young people that aren't in their communities, aren't having, having their first or started we have joined with us a little bit late, but we have from the Georgian project, collective project. He's heading us
everybody. Hello, my name is Blake Robinson. Like I said, I work for the Georgia Project, specifically the Campaign 5, which stands for Voter Initiative for Brothers Engagement. It's a campaign specifically to target black men and get them more actively civically engaged in their community. And I'm based out of the Macon region right now. I do work statewide. When I initially started this job, I started as a canvasser, walking 8 to 10 miles a day doing voter registration, going door to door. So I really got to know my community, which Macon is my hometown, on a different level. And I grew up on the east side of my city also, and got to really know my city on a different level. And some of the steps I took to attack issues I saw, we did public voter registration in all the public schools. We did a lot of community engagement with the local churches and other nonprofits, which was really great. And just seeing specifically black men in our communities, we're engaged but not civically. A lot of black men have been affected by the system and don't feel that that's necessarily the right route to go back and have effective change. And sometimes we focus too much on the economics. Back to what you're saying, engaging with the youth, teaching them more than just chasing money and finding purpose in what they do and doing their life. Like, these are a lot of the lessons I feel like people that are stereotyped growing up in single parent households like I did myself are kind of having to force to learn as they go along and never really having somebody to sit down with them and be able to teach them that. So that's why I work a lot with the youth, and then also coming back and talking to some of those older men in the churches and other nonprofits and black business owners, which we do have in Macon, and seeing how we can affect some of the gentrification and things of that nature happening going on in the state, still in our community and be positive with everything that's going on currently in this time period of COVID, the election, and coming back to mental health, like you all said, it can be affected by it.
And so I wanted to give Blake a chance as well to kind of share with us what he just did, but kind of share with us two of the most pressing issues that you under resource community.
I would say most definitely number one, top two, mental health number one. Being in my area, a lot of people have never left the state, let alone the city. Some have never left their side of the city because it can be that dangerous sometimes. Social ideology, religious ideology, all those things keep us separate sometimes, and separate to a detriment to ourselves and our community. Number two, specifically to our region, I like to say Atlanta is not all of Georgia. Rural Georgia is a little bit different. I say diversity of economic opportunity. If you're not truck driving, working for the police, working for Geico, specifically in Macon, there's not much else you can do and make a working living wage. And while it is cheap to live in Macon, it's hard to do it off a minimum wage. So definitely more diverse economic market where people can actually thrive instead of just live.
future, Clayton is a, oh, yeah, let's clap for that. Or, link it now, you're able to complete it.
Rosemary, if I could jump in really quickly as well, I want to make sure everybody
They
knows.
understand. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Brighter Futures Clayton Group has done some excellent work. Part of their initiative was designed to get new families who had not previously filled out the census engaged in the process. And the most recent update, they've already surpassed their goal. I believe their goal was 200 new families to complete the census, which is going to equate to more than $5 million in total funding for their community. So, I mean, this is what we're talking about, the gravity of the census and why that is so important. You saw the video, but I definitely want to make sure we gave a shout out to them for the excellent work that they've been doing and that continues at least through the end of the month. So please, if you haven't already, make sure you fill out your census.
Yes. Thank you, Sterling. That group, his company is now supporting them to growing their capacity. Partnership for Southern Equity themselves are doing some great work around the Alliance of Boys and Men of Color. We have Blake here who's working on a road initiative for Black and brown males. And so all of this work is super important. What I want to get into now is really the meat of our conversation, I suppose, voter registration. October the 5th is the deadline to actually register to vote. It's the last day anyone can register to vote. If you're not in the system by October the 5th, you probably won't have even time to, receive an absentee ballot or get everything else prepared to make it to the polls. So we want to, this is a picture too of the young guys in their 20s promoting voting at a recent Juneteenth event with a couple more friends of mine. But we want to also make sure that everyone is paying New Georgians projects would take you to the voter registration page. So we want you guys to take a picture of it once it comes up. You can scan it now, but we want you guys to have a direct link to the voter registration page for Georgia. We have that link? We do. All right, so I want to talk about the elections in 2020, right? We have
a major thing because they'll know, hey, the issues that usually they went through the education system in that area, what is lacking, what the economic structures look like there, how can they be improved, what's the best place to quickly allocate resources to affect change in the community. Like, they should be your number one go-to. Services Commissioner, working with the authorities, water authority, the electric company, making sure that they're not price gouged, that the price that they're setting is effective in your area.
So what are some of do you know any of the offices that might be involved in a local election or positions as far as, I would say, because I was trying to ask you a question.
Your commissioners, public service commissioner, water authority, you can vote on that. It's a lot of different stuff. Your school boards, like. In your state and federal elections, but you might be taken off the roll if you do not consistently vote in them. Voting in local elections will ensure that you're always registered because you're actively voting.
Oh wow, I never. Understand that states still hold a power of their own. Our governor is our president, right? And then our president, our governor then has to negotiate with the president or his constituency and everything else above, him. And so. I don't know if we're able to play them though. We had a number of technical difficulties with sound, and I apologize. But I wanted to take you all through the absentee ballot as well. So right now what I want to display is another logo from New Georgia Project about the absentee ballot. So once you register to vote, you'll actually, with the pandemic and everything going on, we'll need to register from home. And this portal allows you to register for the absentee ballot more efficiently and make sure that you're on track. It just launched, but once it comes up, we'll take a second to allow you guys to capture it. We have it. What are some things I want you guys to just share with us out of your experience? I'm not sure how many times you voted or when you were a first-time voter, but are there any experiences that your voting has lended you that gives you any tips for us about showing up at the poll, make sure that we might have jobs that let us out of time? we might, you know, fall into traffic. Are there any tips about making it to the poll without any excuses?
Yeah, I would definitely say take advantage of early voting any way that you can.
In a lot of ways to get in the way. Process effectively and smoothly as well. So I think in all of those things, just to find the time to make sure that it's an urgent priority to participate in the process. And if you identify it as an urgent priority, then you're able to allocate the time even ahead of election day to make sure that that's something that gets done and taken care of.
The part is like when we know this information, tapping in with others.
On what you said about, making voting cool again, I've noticed, kind of going back to the TikTok, Gen Z on TikTok, they are going ham, they're going crazy in terms of mobilizing people. And a lot of these people aren't even 18 years old. On both sides, not just, on both sides of the aisle, I would say. The reason why that rally in Oklahoma was pretty empty was because TikTokers mobilized and they RSVP and did make sure people did show up.
Was a perfect lead in to what we have on the screen now. Looking through candidates, trying to figure out who's at your local level. It was developed by young African-American youth or young adults, and it helps deliver information about your local officials or people that are up on the ballot locally. So it gives you some information. Have. So I want you guys to take a picture of that. I want you take a picture of that. Look it up online. We want you guys to be informed. It's called Politicking. The app is on Instagram as well.
Can I speak something real quick?
Yeah, I definitely want you to go.
Just that's number one, you care. You took an opportunity to sit down and listen to us, this panel, talk about issues in our community. But I think beyond that, the next step is reaching out to somebody that's not active. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has a friend that, doesn't really interact with the political process or is even active in their community in some way. And just taking that and building upon it, finding an issue that they have that can be solved by, being civically engaged. The next step is, like you said, the Black entrepreneurs and also, just being an example. The whole reason I took this job with the New Georgia Project, I could have did a lot of you can actually get registered to vote at 17 and a half in the state of Georgia. So
say I'm sorry to stop you, but say that I'm 17 and a half, so I can register, but November passes. Can I vote at 17 and a half?
You cannot vote at 17 and a half, but the following election you can vote.
What's the following election after November 2020? After November 2020? Is it a runoff or a special election? What is going on after November?
I'm not exactly sure, but
Okay.
I would say definitely check local elections because they have spots, votes, and things of that nature that you'll be able to participate in immediately. As soon as you turn 18, that's when you can vote. But you can get registered at 17.
What would be the splash? I think that's awesome. I was gonna, I guess, note as well as those local elections that might go on.
Primaries and the presidential elections, but the midterm.
And if anybody has questions, kind of like backtrack.
Enough to pose a question if you haven't typed it in on the QR code. No? Okay. And if you do, we're gonna circle back around. I want to take a quick second or a quick break, really quick. I want to really get one of my friends on the line, Bobby Storm. We've had some technical difficulties. She is an angel, and I don't want. But I just want to make that disclaimer. I don't know if you can see me, but I appreciate you. We can't hear you just yet, okay? Give us a moment. Give us a moment. We can see your painting. Can't hear her just yet. She's talking, though. Storm is a close friend. She's also a famed artist. She has a couple of, or not necessarily a couple, she has many songs out, many features out. I apologize. She's just trying to get her audience and she's really busy these days, but she's taking a moment because voting is a very important issue. And she's also, so I met Bobby, I'm gonna share with you all, one of my friends here in Atlanta from Detroit, and they own a nonprofit called Live to Love, Living in Fruition Together. And so they oh, it's low. It's gonna turn you up, Bob. And then you can just let her know. Just tell her when she can't talk.
I can.
Oh, I can hear you. Thank you, Bobby.
Hi, everybody. Be heard. I think that it's very important, and I can't stress how important to just get out there and do that. Like, we were given these rights a long time ago, and that was a choice that was given to us. So if we have choices, we need to choose the right decision because it affects our families, it affects our community. And I'm just really honored to be here today. In particular, we have a lot. We've rioted, we're looting because we're trying to cause change from the top down. And we're rioting because we want our voices to be heard. So if we want to get out there and register for our cars to be driven, why not register to vote so we can drive to let our voices be heard and cause change from the top down? I really think this is so important. I'm looking at the numbers, and especially in our Black community, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. So I'm here today to do my part in trying to change the outcome of this election. And I really need for you guys to get out there and vote. I can't stress that anymore. October 5th is the last day for us to register. So we really need to get out there and do that. Like, it's important and it's easy. Just take the time to do it. I recently just joined a church and they were saying something like, after every welcome message, they said, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. And that was the main reason why I wanted to join this church. And so I'm just here to tell you guys, I love you, and there's one very important thing you can do about it, and that's get out there and vote. So in honor of this day, and in honor of voting and our Black community in Georgia and John Lewis, I'm gonna end this message by singing the Black National Anthem.
Oh, yes.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let the rejoicing rise high as the evening skies. Let us march on till victory is won. Sing the song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Until victory is won. Get out there and vote. Thank you.
That is Bobby. She is like full of energy all the time. That was beautiful. She literally 2 days before this happened, she went to church, she sang, and then she showed up in the newspaper. She yeah. Just really appreciate her, using her influence to push for a vote, to let us know how important this day is. Our show is coming to a close. I want to leave a couple more minutes to highlight any important messages from each of our partners, each of our panelists. I appreciate you guys joining us, but if there's any last minute wishes, if there's any last minute conversation or topics, I really just want to have that kind of open table here. It's for our audience as well. If you guys have any burning questions, please lift your hand. I'll have someone come over to you and grab that question from you, and then we'll answer to that. It does look like we do have a question from the audience. That's a good note. You make it a gift for me. I can't be scared. But give her a mic. They'll find a mic. Can we get her a mic? Thank you. This Dr. Jean Hutley is in our audience today. She's a long-term community member. Her organization's out of Clayton, but she has a question for us.
So I first want to congratulate you all. You all are off the chain. Really proud to be attached to you young Black leaders. We've talked a lot about voting, and we've talked a lot about educating people about the necessity to vote. We talked about educating them in our communities, but we haven't talked, I don't think, enough about how we're going to educate them. And so one of the things I thought about, and I don't know, you may have thought about it, is that when we talk about local elections, that we might need to highlight those offices and tell what each one of those offices represent. Okay, what they bring to that community in that respective position. Can we get that information out to the community by postal service? Can we go to public schools and say, we're not motivating to vote for anybody in particular. We just want people to know, we want the families to know what the local state representative or district representative does for that district.
Meaning their title is what you're saying, or
Not
their job description, what they're responsible for?
Yes, I'm talking about when we are trying to encourage people to vote that don't have a lot of wherewithal about the necessity to vote.
Yes.
Why don't we say the local councilman brings these kind of tools to that district?
Yes.
So that they understand, right, why they need to go to the local polls.
Yes.
Telling them is not enough. We have to really break it down and break it down in a way that they understand. The other issue I have is that all of you should be running for office.
Well, one of us just made office. And that is Shaquana Boykin in New York, Brooklyn's district. She's the honorable.
Brooklyn.
We all aspire to office once we understand what that means, and I take your comment seriously. Go ahead, finish.
Well, when you say understanding what it means, one thing we've all learned is that it's a dirty game.
Yes.
So maybe you need to print a list of your dirt in advance. You know, if there is any. Okay, and just pass it out and say, okay, now get over it. You know, that was yesterday, today is another day. But because you are passionate about the different areas that you have spoke of, and you talked about the brown, and I'm still trying to get the brown and black. I'm not really clear about that. But the black people of color that are in these offices that are not doing what they're supposed to do, and you know what should be done, then you need to run. And I'm going to tell you this too. Don't worry about what you don't know. Because you're going to die not knowing a lot of stuff. Okay? You operate based upon your passion. You follow somebody, like you all have said, that has the same goals and interests that you have, and you learn as much from them as you can. You volunteer in their offices. Okay, you call them and ask for some time with them personally. Whatever you need to do, but do not wait until you think you're ready, because you're ready now. You really are. So that's all I wanted to say. Again, I'm really proud of you all. You're just awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So again, I'm glad I didn't interrupt you, Dr. Jean, or Dr. Hudley, I apologize. The question that you're asking is really, what's the strategy? We're posing all these issues, we're posing all these questions, what's the strategy? The strategy goes back to the same thing that got us here, systematically. Oppressing us will take systematic resolution, right? Or resolve, I apologize. And so that looks like, for me, coalition building, building the capacity of the organizations like yours that are already in the community, that are connected to these young adults, but lack the consistent sponsorship or the consistent ability. So before I go back to your question, I want to actually, that's just my own personal thing. But however, we have a couple of specialists on the stage with us that are involved in coalition building, and they're actually—
Can I interject right here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just specifically to speak on to my campaign vibe right now, and I'm in the beginning of building it. To speak about elections in general on a local level, like you said, we have to disassociate it from being a popularity contest and empowering those people that actually, have solid policies to influence the community in a positive way. Then on top of that, you have to meet people where they're at. Not everybody has the same level of aptitude to understand the intricacies of how this can have long-term effects on the community. So it takes somebody, the person that creates the policy, the person that interprets the policy, and on top of that, the person that's going to be able to relay that in layman's terms to people that may not be able to understand the jargon. So it's a long process, and those are just 3 specific positions, and you might have policy on a wide range of things. So, for example, I'm not an expert on everything. So when it comes to transportation, I have a friend that works for GDOT. So I refer to him a lot, when it comes to, like you said, you asked me about transportation earlier. I have a friend at Georgia State who I refer to as also a black man who studies policy and the intricacies that it has. So just creating that network for yourself, expanding it, and utilizing it for more than just yourself. And like I said, people might have a different ideology as far as religion or social ideologies, but extending yourself beyond that and really just valuing what's positive and what's going to have the most impact for the most people.
So We have something to eat.
Can you all hear me? Okay, so a couple of quick things that follow up to you, and I agree with everything that was just said. I think at the end of the day, when we talk about coalition building, what we're really talking about is finding strategic partnerships, right? Understanding yourself well enough to know what I do well, and understanding yourself well enough to know what you don't know. And then when you know what you don't know, finding the right people to surround yourself with to be able to advance. Now, with Partnership for Southern Equity, we believe in a shared value model. To Kim's point earlier, who is it that reflects the values of the things that you want to see, right? And so we keep the values out front and say, as we partner together, we're looking to reach some end, some goal that's really going to be aligning itself or modeling the values that we collectively believe. And I think from that, we've got to get ourselves beyond this framework of where historically we've been tied to ownership, right? Everybody wants to be the person out front. Everybody wants their name in the lights. Everybody wants to say that they've been the one who created this new thing and this great thing. But at the end of the day, we've got to disassociate ourselves from the need to create and to control everything and every piece of that process. I believe wholeheartedly in giving away a piece of your power every day to empower somebody else. And in coalition building, you have to always keep someone else's ideals, someone else's emotions, someone else's values, as long as they align with the end goal, making sure that you're aligning yourselves with them. Two additional things to your point about, making sure that we're actually walking the walk, right? How are we actually doing this work on a day-to-day basis? And with Partnership for Southern Equity, we've got two different initiatives. One, some of you all might have seen it and heard of it. It's an initiative that one of our organizers started called We the Plug. And what we're really doing is we're working alongside, and we've actually been active in not only training community members to be able to engage in a lot of these processes, but to actually go out and possibly run for some of these seats themselves as well. So that being a part of that civic engagement and flexing that muscle. With the We the Plug initiative, we're really targeting the Public Service Commission. That a lot of times people don't understand how the Public Service Commission sets your rates for a lot of your utilities and how that impacts people on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of times they don't realize that these elections are public elections and that they require a level of engagement that these people are actually voted in a lot of times. And so creating awareness, to your point, around what these functions are, who these people are, and what their actual jobs are when they get into these roles, and then creating that awareness and taking that and educating people and putting them in position to be empowered by participating in this process themselves. The other part of that is, along with Rosebud, he and I have been working on an initiative, he talked about it briefly earlier, called the Georgia Alliance for Boys and Men of Color. And we've been working on this, a coalition similarly of organizations within the state of Georgia who believe in and look at advancing economic opportunity for young men, specifically through flexing their civic muscle and building their professional development opportunity as well and leadership. And through that, we're also partnering with the Greater Clayton Youth Council that was referenced earlier, and a few other partners as well. And we're going to actually do 2 more voter engagement events that we're looking to get off the ground before the election day coming up in November in the Fulton County area and Clayton County area as well. And so working with the Georgia Alliance, we've got our Youth Advisory Council, which is a group of young men specifically within the alliance between the ages of 16 and 24, who are going to be leading up that effort for PSC, working alongside some of these other youth councils as well, to not only give them the opportunity to flex their civic muscle, but to really give them that platform for youth leadership and youth voice as well in the next stage of our process.
Yeah, you're actually next. I was just going to say, Sterling, it's been great working with you. I wanted you to highlight some of the entrepreneurial things you were doing with the water, with the kids that were selling water as well. We worked in the city of Atlanta to spark out that program. And just in my time of you doing that, people don't know the type of work I do, but they talk about that program. I'm like, we help do that. But go ahead, Kim.
To speak to Dr. Hudgens' point, for me, I think 3 things popped in my head is accountability, responsibility, and sacrifice. I think it's important that, for me, it's always about decolonizing my mind, decolonizing the space. So some spaces, we don't always have to come in and think like the church is only made for the gospel. You can share information about what's going on in the community there. You can also change, what we talk about in brick and mortar settings for schools. It's also this level of accountability we have to each other in community. When you think about the village mindset, it's all about us, ensuring our village doesn't burn. When one person isn't doing well, we're all likely not to do well. And you might not feel that reality the same way or the hardship the same way that person is dealing with it, but to some extent you feel. You don't feel happy, you don't feel good that somebody else is not doing right. So essentially when we have to be accountable to each other. If we know information, we shouldn't be gatekeepers of those informations. And we can't always have these high expectations, to stay disconnected. Like young people only want to work with young people, older people only want to work with older people. We have to work with one another. And it starts with like community building starts with us and not being closed-minded. Rather you having one conversation with your mother, your father, your little sister, your little brother, that changes the tone. I mean, even when we step up to be officials in office, we don't have to play the dirty game. We have the opportunity to shape the culture moving forward. That's what we do. We're cultural shapers. Y'all hear it all the time, for the culture, for the culture. We set the tone of how things get done. We don't have to conform to the negative games and the negative ways that don't work. If we conform to those ways, we're not gonna have no good impact as we can see. But really just being accountable to one another and recognizing our responsibility to teach one another, in any small or big way. I think people need to understand that no learning is too small or too big. It's our duty to teach one another. It's our responsibility to have some form of sacrifice. So many great people have died in movements, and even then, no movement has been able to make great stride without great sacrifice. The only reason why a lot of like the segregation and Jim Crow laws, they're probably kind of alleviated a bit, or it doesn't show up the way it used to show up like 50 years ago, is because people made sacrifices. And we had to see how relevant that is. Like we lost some of the greatest leaders within our generation, and we still fighting for those same things. So just making sure that we're accountable for ourselves, recognizing the role you play in your community. What do you know? What can you share? And recognizing how we come together as a unit, and what do we share as a collective, and how do we go forward together. So that's three things I just want to mention. I think that's important to highlight, talking about responsibility that offices hold. And accountability doesn't just work for our community as well, it works for those elected officials as well. They need to be coming down and talking about what they're doing for us and what they're in charge of doing, because sometimes it's not clear, but in a matter of just having one conversation, we can build a sense of clarity. So even then, not just putting pressure on the folks in the community, but also those people who sit in those offices, enjoying the tax dollars, enjoying being able to sustain themselves while having impact over your community. So putting accountability and making sure that they feel you. That they know that you gonna stand up, you gonna represent, and you ain't budging.
Right. I was gonna say, like, what you just mentioned, I think it also indirectly connects to us staying on a local level, right? In the beginning of our conversation, we talked about the wealth gap and people moving from out of state and the people that grew here unable to get opportunity. People are moving here as well for office, right? I know people that moved here strategically for 3 years in a space, and then they applied for office and won. They won because they technically met the requirements. They lived in the district or the area for 3 years, and they were old enough and all these things. And then some people that knew or didn't know them didn't show up. And so just the inconsistencies got people in office that didn't grow here. And those people don't have an intention to come back to the community. They did enough research to get the job. But then to keep up these offices, to keep up success as a successful officer, it takes you to reach back into those communities. Mia, I want you to speak to that question as well. We're going to wrap up our show. We're a little bit past time. But I want you to wrap up that question for us. And we're going to view a video of the 14th Amendment as we leave out as well.
So accountability is a huge word for me. Like that means every sector of my life. So Dr. Jean, I really appreciate that accountability check, that responsibility check. Me personally, like I said, I am the founder and CEO of a magazine, both print and digital. So what we do is we provide that education. We at our disposal have over 3,000 creative entrepreneurs, a part of our community. Now, are we doing it as much as we could or as much as I would love to? No, because just with resources, I'm a self-funded business. Like, in my team, I pay them. You know, I don't believe I come from entertainment. I believe in, you know, pouring back into the people who work hard for us. So I would love to partner with anybody here, you know, so where we can make that happen. Because just like how you said, I want these politicians, you know, to come and sit and tell us, what are you doing for us? And that's what we do with our information and our articles. And, you know, just what we're learning more is that video is what reaches people more than print and word, you know, and we want to educate and be a resource for our community, whether that be, you know, for entrepreneurship, whether that be for creativity, or just even now, if you go to ncmag.co, if you go to our culture section, which is very strategic because politics is very intertwined with our culture, you will learn not only just about, you know, the elections that are coming up, but plain words. What does defund the police actually mean? You know, what does Black Lives Matter actually stand for? Who do these people affect? Most people don't even know. So millions of dollars have been donated to Black Lives Matter, and so many people have never seen it. It's those types of things, and it's this type of passion that, yeah, I do have political aspirations at some point in my life. I don't know, because I believe you're not supposed to make a career out of politics. You're just supposed to go and serve your community, you know, when that time is right. And like you said, you'll never be 100% ready. I still don't think that's my time exactly right now, but one day. But yeah, that's just my response to that question. And how we operate over at NC Magazine, you don't have to be a part of Team NC to contribute or contribute to us, whether that be writing, whether that be lending your talents to edit, shoot, whatnot. We're always open book, and we're always looking to be a hand and, like I said, be a resource to not only our local community in Atlanta, because we reach people across the world. We have readers in India, Sri Lanka, you know, these smaller countries who are also going through political turmoil. And people look to America, and COVID has shown that maybe America isn't that great, or not that, maybe, you know, we have some things that we need to work on, right? So that starting with education. So you guys want to learn a little Sumthin, we cover everything, wellness, culture, and whatnot.
They have creative.
Yeah. So Fem Creative is my personal brand where I encourage primarily women, or just people in general, because so many people like to say that you should only focus on one thing at a time, but I believe God has blessed you with multiple gifts for a reason. You're never just bound to one thing. So that's what Fem Creative stands for. I'm a woman, so fem, but it's just everything that I do is about tapping into the creative gifts that you were born with, and that sometimes you even cultivate.
Right.
So that's what we're about.
And I like that leading too. We're closing out our show. I really appreciate everybody coming. I think that we did a good job opening this conversation up. The intent of me and my co-founder, Christopher Prather, is to inform, prepare, and mobilize you all to get out to the polls. You don't really want to go vote if you don't understand it or anything like that. So we felt it to be imperative on National Voter Registration Day to bring you a couple of our community leaders and even some of our national leaders who are pushing not just for us to vote, but the culture of raising our voices, the culture of putting us at the table. And the table doesn't look like doing focus groups or someone just checking you off the box because you got, you're the age or you're the color that they want, but actually being intentional about how you add to the work, paying you for your value because you're valuable with who you are. Your lived experience are things that they could never grab, right? They can't do their jobs correctly, or whoever it is that we're unhappy with or unsatisfied with are unable to be effective because they don't have the proper experience. And so we want to augment that with us, young people, centennials, millennials, opportunity youth. And so those are ages between 16 and 35, believe it or not. We're all in that space. So we grew up together. We've been each other's little brothers and big brothers and little sisters. So I want to end our show with, yes, the politics. I want to have the CEO of politics because he came here. So I want him to share this with you. But right after this, we're going to let you guys out. I'm going to show a video of some new progress around protecting women's rights or voting rights, and a little history about the 14th Amendment from our partners, New Georgia Project. But really quickly, I have Christopher Robinson. Yeah, come here, man. If you like, just more comfortable standing on.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah.
How y'all doing? I'm Chris Robinson. I'm actually a brand ambassador, not the founder. My sister was the founder of politicking. So that's that. But I just wanted to touch on politicking. It's an app. Basically, how it works is you sign up, you put your name, your address, Atlanta, Georgia, your address, and it tells you who you can vote for. Democrat, Republican, whatever party. It's non-partisan app. So the way it works is we're just trying to spread the message of voting and spread the right candidates out there. We have their platforms available on the app, so when you see the candidate, you see what they're about, who they stand for, everything else. Any questions, you can talk to me. I'll be here. Follow us, Politic in the app, every social media. You can follow me. I'll answer any questions. But take a picture of the QR code, download the app.
Thank you, God. And again, thank you so much, Christopher. I think that the app that you and your sister and her other co-founder created are perfect. I think it goes hand in hand with what we spoke about today. We need to stay informed about, who is actually running for office. But I want to finish off today with another video, since we were successful with the videos. We want to show you one from one of our partners, the Georgia Project. But thank you so much. I'll see you all soon.
These words and others mark the story of Black women for ages. And they also foreshadow the hollow victory in celebrating the 100th anniversary passing of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. You see, while it was for women, unfortunately, what it meant was white women. From 1920 to 1965, that's what women's political empowerment looked like. So we will speak our truth. Black women like Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, Ida B. Wells, Mary Church Terrell, and all the founding members of the then recently organized Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated fought two battles. One for their gender and another for their race within that gender. When the call was sounded to protest the newly elected President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration by suffragists like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, it was done with the face of hurtful discrimination practices among the suffragists themselves. Journalist and anti-lynching crusader Ida B. Wells said of leading suffragist Frances Willard that she unhesitantly slandered the entire Negro race in order to gain favor with those who are hanging, shooting, and burning Negroes alive. And while she wasn't the only one using Black lives as bargaining chips and fighting over who is more included or who is more excluded, I've seen this movie before. Last week, really. Yet African-American club women kept on keeping on. Those of our past saw the vote as part of a much broader range of social, economic, and political issues surrounding their communities. But hey, Black women were intersectional before your little think pieces made it cool. Someone we might have called Miss Ann 100 years ago could be the Karen of today. But we digress. Shortly after 1965, Fannie Lou Hamer and Shirley Chisholm and Flo Kennedy immediately started showing us the way. But it would still be another 10 years to 1975 before most Latinx, Native, and Asian American women could vote. And that right to vote meant that these women would become the leaders themselves, as mayors, senators, speakers of state assemblies, and members of Congress. And so we march on, not apart, but together. Not with petticoats, but in pantsuits. And braids, and locks, and sneakers, and Crocs. And from our homes and our phones online, it was Black women. Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi, who helped us turn the words Black Lives Matter from a hashtag to a movement. As Mary Church Terrell said in 1904, I should answer unhesitatingly. It is a magnificent work our women are doing to regenerate and uplift the race. We celebrate the 19th Amendment's passage while we continue to fight for its promise.
thank you, everyone. We're around. It's food in the back of the room. Refreshments still here for you guys. This doesn't stop here. I think State of Dressing in Georgians is the first time in a new era, essentially, post-pandemic, that we're finding innovative ways to draw together young people while still respecting social distancing. And so I appreciate everyone showing up and showing out. Hopefully our viewers at home got some useful information. You guys are prepared to go out and mobilize and vote in 2020. We will go after this event and continue to canvass, and up until November elections, we'll do what we have to do to get these census surveys in, and everyone that's registered for the event, if there's any information that you missed, we'll be doing a recap and sending it to you through email. So you guys feel free to disband. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you soon. Okay.